Namaskar. Today we will discuss some important theorem of complex analysis which includes maximum modulus theorem, minimum modulus theorem, Liouville's theorem, Schwarz lemma and fundamental theorem of algebra. So first we will discuss maximum modulus theorem. What is maximum modulus theorem? So first we will discuss about maximum modulus theorem. Okay, so what is maximum modulus theorem? Maximum modulus theorem actually says that if f be a function, okay, f be a function, this is analytic in a domain, okay, in a domain D. Okay, so function f this is a function which is analytic in the domain D, and f is continuous. This is continuous in D bar. But what actually implies D bar? D bar means the closure of D. Closure of D means what? Closure of D means actually D union the boundary of D. This is called boundary. Okay, this is called the boundary of D. Okay, now the open set D union with boundary, when you with the union of its boundary gives our closure of D. Okay, so the function f, it should be analytic in the domain D and it should be continuous in the closure of D. Okay, then we can say that if f is non-constant, okay, this is also an important criteria of maximum modulus theorem. So f should be non-constant. So if these three condition holds, then I can assure that, actually not I, actually maximum modulus theorem assures that fz mod will attain its maximum value at actually on the value on the boundary delta D of D. So this is our maximum modulus theorem. Maximum modulus theorem, what are the hypotheses? These are the hypotheses. The function should be analytic in the domain D, it should be continuous in the closure of D, and it should be non-constant in D. Okay, so if these three conditions hold, we can clearly say that fz mod, that is the modulus value of the function fz, will be maximum at the boundary delta D of D. So it can't attain its maximum value inside the domain. It will attain its maximum on the boundary of D. So we can alternatively, if I am not going to the domain definition, if I just stay in a closure, in a closed curve, then what will happen? So maximum modulus theorem has an important alternative form as well. What is the important alternative form? The alternative form is the function f should be analytic in a closed curve gamma. Okay, so the function should be analytic in a closed curve gamma. Then we can drop the continuity criteria, because when a function is analytic in a closed curve gamma, it is obviously continuous as well in that particular closed curve. Okay, so if the function is analytic in a closed curve gamma, and if the function is non-constant in gamma, it should not be constant. Okay, then fz mod will attain its maximum value at the boundary of gamma. So we have to be more precise in this. We have to say that f should be analytic in a closed curve gamma. In a closed curve means what? Inside and on a closed curve gamma. So f should be analytic inside and on a closed curve gamma, and it should be non-constant in gamma, inside and on gamma. Then fz mod will attain its maximum value at the boundary of delta. Sorry, not gamma, not delta, actually gamma. This is our maximum modulus theorem. Now, this theorem push us to a corollary, an obvious result, which also is very important. What is that? That will be a result that if be a function which is analytic in a bounded domain D, analytic in a bounded domain, D, and if f is also continuous in D, f has to be continuous in D. Okay, D bar actually. Then real fz minus real fz, imaginary fz or minus imaginary fz, all of this will attain its maximum at the boundary of D. Okay, not inside D. All of these functions are real functions. We know that fz is given as like this: uxy plus ivxy. This uxy is my real fz and vxy is our imaginary fz. Uxy and vxy both are real functions of several variables, but both of them are real numbers. Okay, now this is our function fz. If fz be analytic in a bounded domain D and f be continuous in the closure of D, then this real fz and this imaginary fz, or minus real fz or minus imaginary fz, all of these will attain their maximum values at the boundary of D. This is our another form. This is actually not form, this is actually corollary of maximum modulus theorem. And how we can prove that? We can prove that very easily. How? We will suppose another function phi z. This will be like this: e to the power fz. This is very easy. If phi z be e to the power fz, now since fz is analytic in a bounded domain D, phi z is also so. And if f is continuous in D bar, phi z will be also continuous in D bar. So fz and phi z both satisfies both the conditions of, both the hypothesis of maximum modulus theorem. So we can apply maximum modulus theorem on phi z as well. So we will apply maximum modulus theorem on phi z. How? First, we will find out what will be the value of modulus phi z. So it will be like this: mod of e to the power fz, and what will be the value of fz? I have already said that it will be like this. Okay, this is our phi z now. This is our fz, and now if these two things are separated, we can have e to the power xy mod into e to the power ivxy mod, and this modulus give us 1. So we are given with like this. Okay, now since we have phi z satisfying the criteria of maximum modulus theorem, we can apply maximum modulus theorem on phi z. So we can clearly say that phi z mod will attain its value, maximum value, at the boundary delta D. Okay, now phi z mod means what? This, and this gives what? This gives e to the power uxy. Okay, this is real number, so modulus gives what? This, and this will attain its maximum value on delta D, because phi z mod attains its maximum value delta D. Since this is equal to phi z mod, so this will also attain its maximum value at the boundary of D, which is delta D. So this portion will attain maximum value on delta D, and if this attain maximum value on delta D, then uxy, okay, since this is the power of e, now e to the power uxy attain the maximum at those points where uxy attain the maximum values, then we can say that uxy will attain its maximum value on delta D. So this is our theorem. So we have real fz will attain its maximum value on delta D. Okay, so we can similarly say that minus real fz, imaginary fz, minus imaginary, all of them will attain their maximum value at the boundary delta D. Okay, now using maximum modulus theorem, we can have another theorem which is called minimum modulus theorem. Okay, this is actually nothing but a corollary of maximum modulus theorem. So what is minimum modulus theorem? Minimum modulus theorem. Minimum modulus theorem gives what? The function f, if it is be analytic in a bounded domain D, if f is analytic in a bounded domain D, this is the first criteria, f should be analytic in a bounded domain D, then fz should not vanish. Should not vanish means what? Fz never becomes equal to 0 inside D. Okay, so fz should not be equal to 0 inside D. So fz should not vanish inside D. Then, and the last criteria should be fz should be continuous in D bar. D bar means what? The closure of D. So this is the three criteria for the minimum modulus theorem to hold. What minimum modulus theorem actually asserts? Minimum modulus theorem actually asserts that fz mod will attain its minimum value. Pay attention to this. This is the minimum value of mod fz. Where it will be attained? It will be attained on the boundary delta D of D. So this is our minimum modulus theorem. So this may look like exactly opposite to the maximum modulus theorem, but it is if I pay a deeper attention to this, I can easily say that this is nothing but just a corollary of maximum modulus theorem. How can we prove this? We can prove this in a very easy notation. How? Since f is analytic and fz is not equal to 0 inside D, we can say that 1 by fz will be analytic in D and continuous in D bar. How? Because fz never vanishes inside D. So 1 by fz will be analytic in D and 1 by fz will be continuous in D bar. So here we are getting two criteria which are the criteria of maximum modulus theorem. So we can apply maximum modulus theorem on this function. So what will we get? We will get mod of 1 by fz will attain its maximum value. Mod of 1 by fz will attain its maximum value at the boundary delta D. Okay. Now 1 by fz mod means what? 1 by fz mod, this will attain maximum value at delta D. When this will be maximum, when will it be maximum? When this portion, the denominator portion, will be minimum. So 1 by fz will be maximum when mod fz will be minimum. Okay, since 1 by mod fz is maximum at the boundary delta D, then mod of fz will be minimum at the boundary delta D, and this is our minimum modulus theorem. Okay, so this is nothing but a corollary of maximum modulus theorem. Okay, now we can have maximum modulus principle like this. What is maximum modulus theorem? Maximum modulus principle? Maximum modulus principle gives f should be analytic in a bounded domain D. Okay, f should be analytic in a bounded domain D, and there should be a point inside D, A. If there exists a point A inside D such that fz mod is less or equals to fa mod for all z belongs to D. So here we are getting a contradictory result of maximum modulus theorem. Which is this? This is actually f should be analytic in D. Okay, f should be analytic in D, and there exists a point, an inside point. I have repeatedly said that maximum modulus theorem asserts that if we get the maximum value of the modulus of the function, we will get that on the boundary only, not inside any point. Now we are getting an inside point A where fz mod becoming less or equal to f of a mod. This leads to a contradictory result now. This will only happen if fz is a constant function. Okay, this is our maximum modulus principle. Okay, so if the function fz is analytic in a bounded domain D, and if f is continuous in D bar, and there exists an inside point A in D such that fz mod is less or equals to fa mod for all z belongs to D, then we can clearly assert that fz is nothing but a constant here. That's why it is becoming less or equals to some inside point value of that function. Okay, so this is our maximum modulus principle. Okay, now we will have another look on what effect maximum modulus theorem have on harmonic function. Suppose uxy is a harmonic function on, not on actually, inside and on a simple connected domain D. Okay, so uxy is a harmonic function inside and on a simple connected domain D. Now, if uxy is harmonic, then we can easily say that uxy will have its maximum value on the boundary delta D. How? Because we can say that easily that if uxy is harmonic inside and on a simple connected domain D, then it will be a real part of an analytic function on that simple connected domain. Okay, so uxy will be the real part. Uxy will be the real part, and I will get a function fz which will be analytic, which will have uxy as its real part, and its harmonic conjugate, it will exist vxy, that will be its imaginary part. Okay, so how I get that harmonic conjugate function? This harmonic conjugate function is obtained from Cauchy-Riemann equation. Okay, and the value vxy is unique up to some additive constant. Okay, so now I will get an analytic function. Okay, since this is analytic, we can apply maximum modulus theorem on this. So we can easily say that fz attains its maximum modulus at the boundary. Now we can have another function e to the power fz. This is also analytic, and if this is analytic, we can apply maximum modulus theorem on this, and this gives what? If the modulus of it gives e to the power xy only, and this will be maximum. This will have its maximum on the boundary delta D, and it will have its maximum on the boundary delta D. It implies that uxy will also have its maximum value on the boundary delta D. Okay, so that's why this is our effect. This is our effect of maximum modulus theorem on harmonic function. Okay, this is our maximum modulus theorem calculation. Now we have to calculate we have to assert another theorem, which is Hadamard's three-circle theorem. Hadamard's three-circle theorem. Three circles theorem. This gives what? Suppose omega, the region Z, where Z mod is greater than A and less than B. This is nothing but an annulus region. Okay. Now, if be a function which is analytic in gamma. Okay. So, since it is analytic in gamma, it will be continuous, and then fz mod will have a maximum value on each mod z equals to r. Suppose mr be a function such that this is the maximum value of fz on mod z equals to r, where r is greater than a and less than a. So this is our function mr. So mr is the maximum modulus of fz measured on mod z equal to r. This is the circle, mod z equals to r. So this will be like this. This will be our inner circle with radius A. This will be our outer circle with radius B. Okay, so hereupon the inner circle fills where mod z equals to R. Okay, suppose MR equals to maximum mod Fj, mod z equals to R. So this is our criteria. Now we will see that the function MR will this is why three circles are there, that's why it is called Hadamard's three circles theorem. So we will get what? We will get a theta such that MR will be less or equals to MA to the power 1 minus theta into MB to the power theta, but theta will be like this: ln R by A divided by ln B by A. This will be the value of theta. So theta will be obviously less than 1 and greater than 0. So we will get such theta where MR will be less or equals to MA to the power 1 minus theta into MB to the power theta. Now we can also say this Hadamard's three circles theorem as the convexity proof, convexity assertion of the function ln MR of ln R. So this I can say that ln MR is a convex function of ln R. So how this will happen? This will happen like this. Suppose we have ln R, this is ln MR. Okay, so now we have this one. This is our ln A, this is our ln B, this will be my ln R. Okay, so this side and this side. This will be my ln MB, this is my ln MR, and this is my ln MA. Okay, so we can easily say that this is a convex curve of ln MR with respect to ln R. Okay, so how can we get that? We can get that I can take the value of theta to be like this and can suppose this like this: MA whole to the power 1 minus this ln R by A by ln B by A. Okay, into MB ln R by A ln B by A. Okay, so now we have if I power the whole side by ln B by A, we get what? We get MR to the power ln B by A is less or equals to MA whole to the power ln B by A minus ln R by A into MB to the power ln R by A. Okay, now we get what? If I take logarithm of both sides, then I will get ln MR to the power this comes here, ln B by A is less or equals to I will get what? Ln B by A minus ln R by A. This gives ln B by R. So this is ln B by R. ln B by R into ln MA plus this is ln R by A into ln MB. Okay, so we will get what? We will get ln MR is less or equals to ln B by R means what? ln B minus ln R, ln B minus ln R divided by ln B minus ln A into ln MA plus ln R minus ln A divided by ln B minus ln A into ln MB. Okay, so this gives the convexity of ln MR with respect to ln R. So we can tell that Hadamard's three circles theorem gives the convexity of the function ln MR with respect to ln R. Okay, now we will discuss the Schwarz lemma. What is Schwarz lemma? Schwarz lemma gives if a function f delta to delta bar, delta means the unit disks surrounding the origins z equal to 0. Okay, this is our function f delta to delta bar Okay, so delta is our unit disk. Unit disk. Unit disk means what? Unit disk means all the complex numbers whose modulus is 0 to less than 1. Okay, so this is our unit disk, and delta bar means what? Delta bar means the closure of this within its boundary. This one. So this equality holds for delta bar. So f is an analytic function. Suppose f is an analytic function. Okay, f is an analytic function and it is defined from unit disk delta to the closure of unit disk delta bar. Okay, so I can easily say that the fz mod is less or equals to 1 for all z belongs to delta. Okay, mod fz is less or equals to 1 because f cannot go beyond delta bar. So it should have a modulus which will be less than or equal to 1. And similarly, we can have another criteria for Schwarz lemma to hold, which is fz should have a 0, has a 0 of order n at origin z equals to 0. Okay, so fz should have a 0 of order n at origin z equals to 0. Now, what we will get? We will get, okay, then Schwarz lemma asserts that fz mod will be less than equals to mod z to the power n for all z belongs to delta, and f dashed n dashed at the point origin. This means what? F is derived, f is differentiated n times with respect to z at the point origin have a modulus less than equal to n factorial. These two are the Schwarz lemma assertion. Okay, so the criteria are like this. F should be a function analytic from delta to delta bar, and it should have 0 of order n at origin z equal to 0. Then we will have fz mod is less or equals to mod z to the power n, and fn0 mod less or equals to n factorial. Okay, so this is our Schwarz lemma. And if we come like this, if n becomes equal to 1, then we will get what? We will get fz should be analytic from delta to delta bar, and it should have a simple 0. Simple 0. Simple 0 means a 0 of order 1. Simple 0 at origin. Okay, then we will get what? We get fz mod is less or equals to mod z, and f dash 0 will be less or equals to 1. And the equality hold when? Well, the equality will hold when fz will be like this. Fz will be like this, epsilon j to the power n for this, and for this it will be fz equals to epsilon, not mod, sorry, this is not mod, epsilon j, where mod of epsilon gives what? Mod of epsilon is equals to 1. Then and only then the equality will hold. Otherwise, the function fz mod will be strictly less than mod z to the power n, and fn0 will be strictly less than n factorial. Okay, so this is our Schwarz lemma. Okay, now we will get another theorem, which is Liouville's theorem. It's a very important theorem and very necessary one. This is Liouville's theorem. And what is Liouville's theorem? Liouville's theorem tells that if a function f be bounded and entire means it is analytic throughout the C, then it must be a constant. Okay, then it must be a constant. This is our Liouville's theorem. So Liouville's theorem have plenty of corollaries. The first one is, if I get a function fz which is entire and mod fz is greater than m for all z belongs to script C, fz has to be entire. Okay, fz has to be entire and mod fz should be greater than equals to some real number m, which is obviously greater than 0. Then I can tell that fj is nothing but a constant function. Look at this very carefully. This is this seeks more attention. What? Because fz here, mod fz is not bounded here. Actually, it is greater than some constant number m for all z belongs to C. Okay, so fz mod remains, the value of fz mod remains outer of a circle with radius m. Okay, then I will get fz will be constant if f is entire. So this is our Liouville's theorem corollary. How can I get that? I can get that very easily, because since fz is greater than equals to m, so fz is not equal to 0 for all z belongs to script C. So it can never be equal to 0, because if it anywhere equals to 0, then its modulus will be also equal to 0, then it can't be greater than equal to m. So we must have fz is not equal to 0 for all z belongs to C. Now since fz is entire, then 1 by fz will be also so. So 1 by fz is entire and 1 by fz mod will be less or equals to 1 by m. Why? Because fz mod is greater or equals to m, then if I take the reciprocal of both sides, I will get what? 1 by mod fz is less or equals to 1 by m. So I can get 1 by fz is entire and 1 by fz is bounded. So 1 by fz is a function which is entire and bounded. Then I can tell that 1 by fz is constant. How? Because the Liouville's theorem. And 1 by fz constant implies what? Fz is constant. Okay, so at every instances for the Liouville's theorem to assert that if function entire and bounded should be constant is not necessary, because the boundedness is always not necessary. I can also replace this boundedness by saying that the function should take a certain amount of modulus value which is greater than m for all C, all the values of z belongs to C. Then also the function will be constant. So this is first corollary of Liouville's theorem. The second corollary will be very much similar. If real fz or imaginary fz, these are bounded. Okay, if real fz or imaginary fz are bounded, then and fz is entire, obviously if f has to be entire and the real fz or imaginary fz is bounded, then I can also say that f is a constant. How? Because if I say that fz is entire, then it implies that e to the power fz will be also entire, and if e to the power fz is entire, I can get what? E to the power fz mod is equals to e to the power xy, which is the real part of fz. And since e to the power xy is bounded, real fz is bounded, I have been given that real fz is bounded, then e to the power xy is also bounded. Okay, then if this one is bounded, I can get what? E to the power fz is entire and mod e to the power fz is bounded, so e to the power fz is constant function. If e to the power fz is constant, fz is also constant. Okay, so real fz or imaginary fz is bounded and function f is entire is also a alternative criteria for Liouville's theorem to hold. Okay, now I will discuss another theorem which is very important, fundamental theorem of algebra. Fundamental theorem of algebra gives what? Fundamental theorem of algebra gives fundamental theorem of algebra. Fundamental theorem of algebra gives what? Fundamental theorem of algebra gives if Pz be a polynomial of degree n, then it will must have a zero in C, and hence it will have n zeros which may or may not be distinct in C. This is our fundamental theorem of algebra, and this theorem gives a very important corollary. The corollary is if Pz be a polynomial, then if Pz be a polynomial of degree n, then its range will be equal to C. In fact, all the value in script C will be attained by Pz, at n distinct points. Okay, at n distinct points. How can I get this? I can get this very easily, because by applying fundamental theorem of algebra on the polynomial qj, where qj is equal to pz minus omega. Okay, now since pz minus omega, this is a polynomial of degree n, so qz is a polynomial of degree n, then it will have n zeros, so qzi will be 0 for I equals to 1 to n. These zi's will be belonging to C. These are the zeros, and then I will get what? Qzi equals to 0 gives pzi minus omega equals to 0. This gives what? Pzi equals to omega, and hence I can get n distinct values. Distinct or may not be. They may be distinct or may not be distinct. So there are n points where pz gives the value omega. So pz takes each and every value of C. So this is our corollary for fundamental theorem of algebra. This is all I have for discussion. If you like, give some feedback, and thank you.